My phone now says it's 7 o'clock, and therefore I will call this meeting of the Bedford Planning Board to order on February 24th, 2026. First, I must begin by reading the statements from the governor and government. Pursuant to legislation S 2475, extending the suspension of certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL 38, paragraph 20, this meeting of the Bedford Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Thank you one and all for listening to that. And it's also notifying to all attendees that the meeting is being recorded, which we much appreciated. And we are now at full strength. And I believe the first topic on the agenda is a comprehensive plan update. And it might be Jennifer Goldson here to speak on this. Am I correct?
Yes, hi, Steve. Thank you so much. Jen Goldson here. Austin and I have oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and thank you.
Yes, thank you. Did you want me to
before-
take over? Yeah, go ahead.
Can
don't
I
know-
also just interject, Mr. Chair, that we have a handful of people in the audience who are interested in the subdivision application, which late this afternoon was requested to be continued without testimony. And so I just thought we might save,
Oh, is this the 145 Davis Road?
145 Davis Road is not going to be heard this evening. And I didn't get through to all the abutters I was aware of. And I do see at least two in the audience.
Okay.
That
Now, do we need to move to continue this to a future meeting?
Well, one option would be to take it out of order and continue it to a future meeting.
Let's do that. Then we can have that, and then my memory won't be taxed any longer. Is there a motion to continue the meeting, the hearing for 145 Davis Road, Jeffrey Circle subdivision plan to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote. Todd?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Chris?
Just point of clarification, that is March 10th.
Yes.
I just said a future meeting because we need them to speak.
Well,
But
if you don't continue to a date certain, we'll have to re-advertise it. So
okay,
for the time being, I would just ask you continue it to March 10th.
March 10th. Wonderful date. I like that one. And how do you vote, John?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right. Now we are going to go back to Jennifer and Austin. Whomever of you would like to speak first, we are all ears.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're happy to be here. I'm Jen Goldson. I'm the owner and founder of JM Goldson, my firm that I created about 20 years ago. We've been doing comprehensive plans like this, as well as community engagement, housing plans, housing trust. And we've met some of you, but not all of you. So what we thought we'd do is do a presentation, just giving a status report of what has been happening. There's a lot that's been happening. I bet you've been involved with some of it. I know that that some of your members on the committee have been very, very instrumental in having some extremely successful engagement over the past several months. And we're going to present a little bit about what we've learned and where we are in the process, and then what's coming up next. There's some important things coming up, including working sessions in April that we hope you all can go to, and we'll tell you more about that as we get into it. So, Austin, I think you should be able to share your screen as a panelist, right? And you can just go to the next slide. So our team is a little bigger than who you see here. Austin is our project manager, and he really keeps everything going on a day-to-day basis. He's very organized, and he's been your main point of contact. I'm the project director. And then we have a couple people that are working more behind the scenes. Lucy Corlett is one of our project assistants, and Flavio Villa is also a project assistant, and they've done quite a bit of mapping and analysis and doing things behind the scenes. You may see them from time to time, but mostly you'll see me and Austin. Next slide. So first, I just want to say that this has been an extremely collaborative effort, and that's the kind of project that we enjoy and actually seek out. And the planning department, the comprehensive plan advisory committee, and just the community has had a lot of energy towards engaging in this so far. So we wanted to just upfront just thank everyone for the momentum so far. So the comprehensive plan is, I'm sure a lot of this may be review. There may also be people watching who it's the first time they've heard of a comprehensive plan. So we wanted to go through a little bit of the basics before we get into the meat of what's been going on. But a comprehensive plan is really a roadmap for the next decade for Bedford. It helps you to align decisions, anticipate change, and then connect investments to community priorities. It's really meant to be a big push to get community engagement so that decision makers like yourselves and other boards and committees in the community can really understand where the community wants to see the town going and what's realistic as well for the town. What kind of implementation capacity do you have? Where can you get funding? All of those things will be part of really the next phase when we think about strategies. But what we've been doing so far is trying to understand what are the things that community members really value about Bedford, and what are they looking to improve upon? Where do they want to go in the future? Next slide. So we believe in deep public engagement, and I think that's one of the reasons why Bedford hired us. We have a very strong track record of engaging communities in this discussion. We think this is probably the most important discussion these community members will have in the next decade, just about the future of the town. And so we do everything we can to get the word out, and that includes well, we'll talk more about the different kinds of engagement we've done, but essentially our goal is to have both deep and broad conversations. So we say deep public engagement here, but it's also broad public engagement. Some people won't be able to contribute in a deep way, and that's okay. But we want everyone to have the opportunity to participate at the level that they can. So we have some shorter ways people can engage, and we have some deeper ways people can engage. Raise your hand if you were part of I know a couple of you were, but if you were part of a meeting in a box that happened. Yeah. So that's an example of a deeper way that you can engage. You can really have a in-depth conversation for a couple of hours. Shorter ways are, stopping by a pop-up table and participating in an activity, or even the survey could be considered a shorter way. It's not short, but it's not as long as a meeting in a box, or even something that we did online that we call the crowd map, but it's basically an interactive map online. So that's kind of a quicker way. You could spend a long time on it, or you could pop in and say, I want to see improvements here and I want to preserve this. Our plans are also data informed, and we'll go through everything we've done to date, including the existing conditions summary, which Austin will present to you in more detail. And then really grounded once we get to the strategy stage, grounded in actionable strategies that are aligned. So you can have actionable strategies, but if they're not aligned with what the community is looking for and what's realistic for the community, what kind of regional things are going on, what kind of resources are out there. So being both aligned and actionable are really important. All right, next slide. So we are kind of straddling, we're sort of at the end of phase 2, starting to enter into phase 3. In the first phase, we really worked to try to understand Bedford, and we put together an analysis that's backed up by Excel spreadsheets that are very detailed, and we put it into a summary format that that the planning department has reviewed, and I know the planning department also sent that out to department managers back in late August, early September to also review. The committee has also reviewed this, and I want to just say that tonight we'll present some of the key findings, but Austin's really going to just touch the surface of it, because there actually is a very robust analysis around the, we didn't want to spend an hour talking to you about it or 2 hours. So we're just hitting the highlights. So if you do have other questions or want to dive in deeper, just let us know. And I think you got that deliverable in your packet, so you should be able to see the whole thing as well. All right. And then starting really in October, we really kicked off this phase 2, which is really getting out into the community and trying to understand what are the issues you see today, and what is the future that you hope for, that this plan will help you address. And we spent several months starting in October and really starting to wind down now around trying to understand that. And so tonight, Austin's going to also talk through what we learned from that. He's going to go through the different tools that were out there, some of the things that people told us, and then hit the highlights of what themes came out of that. And then we're about to enter into this phase 3. This is where people, a lot of committee members that I work with are itching to get to this point, where we're really talking about strategies. We're talking about zoning. We're talking about local initiatives. We're talking about staffing, resources, et cetera, for the next decade. So that's what we're just about to dive into. And that phase will really go through into the summer, into the middle of the summer. We don't like to shortchange that or the visioning or really any of these phases, but we like to really come up with a plan that has a lot of ownership. So we think that the engagement at each phase is very important, including this strategy phase. And then at the end, we'll basically wrap up, lay it all out. By then, the decisions will have been made by the time you get into phase 4. And we're basically making it pretty by then. We're kind of pulling in photographs, laying it out, working with our graphic designer, making sure that you think the way it is laid out and looks, and the photos that we're using is speaking to the community in the way you want to convey the messages. And then we also talk about implementation and how Bedford wants to go about implementing, what kind of oversight, et cetera. That all happens in phase 4. All right. So you can see also at the bottom, we have a little graphic that just shows how the phases are really overlapped. There's not really a clean break, like we're done and we're moving on. They're all a bit overlapped. All right, next slide. All right, so I'm going to hand this off to Austin, who will walk you through that existing conditions summary profile. And I'm sure he's happy to answer questions. And then we'll touch on, engagement, vision, themes, and then we'll wrap up with next steps. All right, Austin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm just going to touch on some highlights, like Jen said, because the existing conditions summary is a summary of about 65 pages or so. So to touch on all 65 pages would definitely take more than 2 hours. So I'm just going to touch on a few highlights per the kind of elements of planning that we're coming to this comprehensive plan with, that have been really instrumental and valuable kind of findings that we've taken into the project. But first, I want to talk about our purpose and our approach. So the study of existing conditions is something that's required in comprehensive plans per Massachusetts general laws. And traditionally, they're very lengthy, very technical documents, kind of a process document that can sometimes get lost or get forgotten or not even get fully brought forward. So we want to make sure that all the work that we're doing for the town establishes a really strong foundation for the community to be planning for the next 10 years of really useful information that's relevant directly to the project, to the next stages of the project, and to the next 10 years. So the elements as part of that planning study include land use, housing, economic development, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, services and facilities, and circulation and transportation. So we really wanted to make sure that going through all of that kind of breadth of information we're right sizing our research approach to the planning task that's at hand. Because there's a lot of different technical studies, like we conducted Bedford's housing study several years ago, and that's a more in-depth way of diving into one of these details. But we wanted to make sure the study we were doing was the right kind of tool for the job for this comprehensive planning project. So we found out that Bedford is growing, diversifying, and aging, growing to about just over 14,000 residents in 2020 as of the 2020 census, diversifying with more than 1 in 4 residents now identifying as a race other than white, and aging with 20% more residents over the age of 65 since the year 2010. Population projections vary significantly, though, depending on the methodology that's used. And this is something that we're seeing that's pretty common throughout municipalities in the region. It really depends on the local land use regulations, migration patterns, both in the region and internationally. That's something I know that's kind of shifting quite a bit the past few years.
Austin, could you hold a second? Do you want people to ask questions while you're, like right now, Chris has his hand up.
You know, I wonder if it would,
Better hold him.
I wonder, Austin, if it would be better to get through. The answers might become apparent and sort of take them at the end. That's what my advice would be.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you. So the key factors kind of in what the population projections could turn out to be vary significantly. So it could be one of two very different answers, but it will depend on how the next few years shake out and how Bedford kind of aims to meet the challenges and opportunities that it's facing. And when we studied housing in Bedford, we found that there's a mismatch between the households and the homes available for them. There's a lot more large homes than there are large households. And part of this is just because of the fact that homes were built at one point and households change on a faster basis than the homes themselves do. So for example, I know Jen's household recently got smaller because both of her kids went away to college. So her household shrank significantly, and now she has extra bedrooms that she's not really using. My household also got smaller because I'm now living in a studio by myself. So now I'm a one-person household. So examples like that are kind of show how quickly the population's needs can change in terms of housing. But when a building lasts 100 years, it can be slow for them to keep up. So there's been a long-term trend towards smaller and smaller household sizes. This is not just in Bedford, but it's true in the region and also the nation. And that means there's often a mismatch between what people need and what the household needs are and the available homes. And this means that even if Bedford's population doesn't grow in terms of total number of people, there could be a need for housing production, even just for smaller, more accessible homes for an aging population or for people that are living alone or living as a couple longer in their lives. And we also looked at housing cost burden. And so what we mean in the field when we're talking about cost burden is that your housing costs are really high for your income. If you're a renter, that means your rent, your renter's insurance, your utilities. If you're a homeowner, that means property taxes, mortgage insurance, etc. And if you're cost burdened, it means you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing costs. If you're extremely cost burdened, you're spending more than 50% of your income on those housing costs. And so in Bedford, what we found was that there are cost burdens that extend not just to extremely low or very low income individuals and households, but also to moderate income households. So there's a need for more deeply affordable homes, to be certain, but still a need for homes that are affordable at 80% and even at 100% AMI. And the AMI, when we talk about that in the field as well, is that kind of middle income level in the region used to determine eligibility for affordable housing programs. Many are at 80% AMI, like those in Chapter 40B. The Community Preservation Act sets it at 100% AMI. Currently, the AMI for a family of 4 is 160,900. For a single person household to be qualified in low income, that's up to 80% AMI here, is a $92,650 income for a single person. So they qualify for subsidized housing under 40B. And you can see that nearly a half of Bedford's households that are in that range are spending either more than 30% or more than 50% of their income on housing costs. And it's 2/3 of households basically in the very low income and extremely low income categories. So that kind of points to some significant challenges with housing costs and the amount that people are having to pay to maintain their home in Bedford. We also looked at Bedford's local economy, and we really learned that Bedford is a very specialized and evolving employment hub. And when I said employment hub, I mean that more people commute into Bedford than out during the day. This really reinforces Bedford's status as a home of biotech companies and of industrial areas. Lots of people come into town to work every day in those higher wage specialized sectors. And there's also opportunity there, not just the strength that Bedford has for the evolution of those sectors as spaces become vacant or the economy changes less toward biotech and more toward AI and other things like that. The evolution of those sectors can give Bedford some opportunities for advanced manufacturing, biotech, and defense R&D. And the live and work and hybrid employment environment also changes up Bedford's local economy as well. Some underutilized older office or commercial buildings can see reuse and new uses and more all-day commerce because folks are maybe working hybrid or having a flexible work schedule can lead to more revitalization of commercial corridors like the Great Road. If there's more folks available at more times a day to get their laundry done, to go to the cleaners, to go to a coffee shop, etc. When we looked at transportation, we also found that the congestion patterns in Bedford are evolving, and this is both true in the traffic patterns as well as anecdotally. Partly because of remote and hybrid work, the peak traffic patterns are more spread throughout the day now, so you're seeing more all-day congestion throughout town. There's also limited transit options in Bedford and low use of transit. Less than 1% of Bedford residents use transit to get to work. It could be that more residents are using it for non-work trips, but the options that are given are not as conducive to Bedford residents for getting to work as they stand. There's also safety concerns at key areas with over 1,000 crashes since 2020. The pedestrian and bicycle plan implementation has been aligned with other ongoing projects like the Great Road Master Plan and to the extent possible, the new traffic calming policy that's being rolled out. So there's some alignment there in terms of increasing safety. We also found that Bedford has a very active community culture with lots of local event programming, a Bedford Cultural District, a local historic district that regulates exterior changes to the buildings in downtown Bedford, and a significant number of documented historic resources, though most of them are after the year 1700 and scattered in a few specific places in town along corridors and in specific areas. We also know that Bedford has a really valued areas of green space and recreation access. There's abundant outdoor and indoor recreation facilities, partly because Bedford was an early adopter of the Community Preservation Act at the 3% surcharge level. So that has given the town dedicated regular funding and access to those state distributions to get bonus money to dedicate to open space, to historic preservation and community housing as well. The Green Network covers nearly a third of the town's area, with a federal wildlife refuge areas, town forests, neighborhood parks, centralized athletic fields, and rail trail connections. 70% of the open space in town is permanently protected, and most of that protection comes from the federal ownership in the wildlife refuge. Bedford also has a reputation as a well-run local government, known for outstanding schools, prudent fiscal management, and robust public services. We found that some older facilities may need some accessibility and adaptation upgrades in coming years, and succession planning and workforce development are ongoing needs, as they are for many small town governments. So moving forward, the key kind of points that we found to summarize that 65-page document that itself was a summary of a lot of analysis that we had done on the back end is that Bedford's not static. The community is evolving and ready to meet the changing circumstances. So we have the kind of final edits incorporated from the planning department comments that we received a few weeks ago, and we're ready to post the latest draft on the project website for the public. So I'll pause here and take any comments or questions you have on this piece before I continue on to the vision, themes, and goals.
Okay, Chris, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, first off, excuse me. Great presentation. Thank you so much for this. Will the slides be available?
Sorry, I think I coughed exactly at the time of the important part of your question. Please.
Will the slides be available?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And second question, if you go back to the population predictions,
Yes.
and this is getting a bit into the weeds, but the two projections which diverge dramatically after 2020, yeah, did either of those models attempt to go back to 1990 and then forward predict to 2020 to see how they did with respect to reality?
That is a great question. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I know that MAPC has been doing these projections for several decades now. So I can go back through and have a double check of how close they were to reality.
Yeah, I'm very curious, how they look, 5, 10 years out, if they have projections from back a ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a feeling that I'm recalling from the last comprehensive plan that you all did several years ago that the projections were expected to be a little more stable. So it looks like there was more growth than they were expecting. That could be partly due to some local land use regulation changes or any 40Bs that might have come through over the last 10, 15 years or so that could have impacted that. Things like that, you can't predict a 40B.
Yeah, and that's part of my question is that they're going to have their model, and then there are other things that they can't. Never mind if the model is the inherent limitations of the model itself. You have noisy inputs, and you're not capturing all effects. Do the effects that you're not able to capture in the model end up dwarfing the trends that you're able to that you think you're able to predict? That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, Chris, those are great questions, and I'm always skeptical of the projections. As a planner, there's so much that could change. I see Catherine has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on this, that I actually raised with Austin the fact that last time there'd been two sets of projections being produced around the time we were doing the plan, and that they'd varied quite a bit. And so we were interested to see, well, did one of them come out as right and the other one wrong or whatever? And it did actually come out in between the two. But it's as a result of that comment, I think, that they've shown, again, there are two different projections available. So I think that's an interesting point in its own right. And as they've explained, it depends partly on what you do to follow on from the plan. It depends partly on your own actions in terms of zoning, but it also depends on also things like turnover in the existing housing stock and the economy and a lot of different things.
Following on that, what about neighboring towns to us? And yet, because you're working with a lot of towns, Jennifer, is MAPC their preferred model that other towns use?
It depends. We typically present both just because we know that they diverge. And in my opinion, it highlights the fact that nobody really knows what's going to happen. So I think it's safer to just use both, but sometimes communities have asked us to use one over the other.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? All right. You want to go back to continue presenting, Austin?
I would be pleased to. All right, so my next little presentation section is the draft vision, themes, and goals. And I'm going to, again, touch on these in a higher level because I know you received more of the full content in your packet, and it wouldn't be nearly as fun for me to just read them verbatim. So where this came from, 678 participation points, and counting. So by using all of these different ways to get input that Jen kind of touched on in the beginning, the community survey that was held online, the crowd map, which is that tool where you can drop pins on the map, the meeting in a box, which I know some of you joined, and some that were able to be hosted by the advisory committee members at Town Hall and at the library, as well as the in-person open house that we facilitated. Using all those different ways, you've already exceeded the amount of public input from the previous comprehensive plan, and we're only halfway through. So there's more public input planned, especially in this next stage in phase 3, where we'll be focusing on strategies with 6 in-person workshops scheduled for mid-April. So I wanted to touch on kind of that overview of the public engagement process so far and what we heard, because what we heard directly informed the vision, core themes, and goals. We didn't invent those out of thin air. We took them through a verbatim reading of everything that we had transcribed from the open houses, the workshops, the meetings in a box, and the survey. We heard things like people want more walkability and bike accessibility, more affordable housing, meaning smaller units that are just easier to upkeep and more affordable to buy, better public transportation options. Someone said, I want to feel that my kids are safe when they walk or bike to school. And one person said they're looking for a more overarching look and feel of the town to bring people together. And when we asked in the survey, what do you love most about Bedford? A quarter of people said that they love that it's a safe community. Just nearly 20% of people said that outstanding public school system is what they loved most. Other responses were accessible open spaces and natural resources, the town's historic significance, and award-winning town services. Through the crowd map, we got a lot of very detailed space-based feedback that we're partly drawing into the vision, themes, and goals, and partly drawing directly into some strategy ideas that we're starting to work on behind the scenes. People suggested ideas like adding a new crosswalk to the school campus, more Great Road facing small shops to create a visually appealing walkable shopping area like Concord Center or Lexington Center. And then ideas for Loomis Street in the depot area being a potential second town center or common area if done well, with buildings like the Blake Block more downtown cited as an example, with green space, hidden parking, mixed use, outdoor seating, and public art. So people got a lot of good ideas flowing through the crowd map, and we were really happy to see all of those engagement points there. So in general, the structure of the plan is a little bit like a Russian nesting doll. The vision statement overlies the whole thing. So that's kind of the guiding message of the comprehensive plan. Each of the themes sits underneath that vision statement as one of the kind of themes of that vision. And each theme has a set of goals. The goals are designed to support that theme, and the theme then supports the vision. So tonight's focus is just on the vision, themes, and goals. The next layer under that is that each goal will have a set of strategy ideas. The strategies are much more specific ideas. Like Jen mentioned earlier, which committees are going to do which kinds of actions over the next 10 years, or if you want to study something else in particular, that's a strategy idea. So the goals, the vision, the themes are more intentionally higher level because they're more about what you're aiming for rather than how you're going to get there. The plan is also going to include metrics. So that's part of the way that you'll be able to measure your progress toward the goals and toward the vision in the themes. Those are specific ways to kind of measure that success. And so we'll be developing those in phases 3 and 4 as the strategy ideas are worked on and revised. So there's 6 themes in the plan, and these themes are both going to become chapters of the comprehensive plan itself, but are also 6 themes that we heard from the public engagement. And these have been workshopped with the advisory committee in 2 separate meetings. So we feel really good about presenting them here to you tonight. And we also have a public comment survey open on our project website to get more public feedback on these as well. So the first theme is safe and easy ways to get around. This is all about safety, about choice and how to get around town, and about mitigating traffic. The second theme is vibrant village centers and a stronger local economy. This one's about strengthening what already exists in Bedford, about improving the quality and function of these spaces as they evolve. The third one is design history and a strong sense of place. This is about guiding how the town evolves, really, strengthening the community identity through public spaces and through design and through a celebration of the town's history. The fourth theme is homes that support choice, dignity, and belonging. That's about providing the options that people need as their households evolve and as their needs evolve, and providing those options thoughtfully and in the right locations so that people can have the kind of lives that they want to lead in Bedford. It's about choice, not about mandates. It's about adapting and allowing the homes to meet the needs of residents as they evolve. The fifth theme is belonging, civic life, and shared spaces. This one's about civic involvement and about trust in local government. There's a lot of different ways in which communication has changed in the last 10 years since the last comprehensive plan. Social media has changed a lot. Internet communication is totally different. So it's about making sure the town is up to speed, up to date, and how people want to communicate, how they want to engage with local government, on adapting and meeting to resident needs through the processes that the town uses, the town's facilities, and also the town's services. And theme 6 is outdoor recreation and environmental stewardship. And this reflects a really strong community identity with open spaces, with the town's environment, sustainability, and recreation. So these themes are really kind of directional for the plan. Each theme will be given its own chapter of the plan so that we can go through in detail what those goals are and what the strategy ideas are for each of the themes. And the goal is for it to be aspirational. So it's partly about what success feels like in 2036 after 10 years. It doesn't really mandate specific projects or regulatory changes in these themes. Those are more to come in the strategies over this next phase. So these themes start to outline your roadmap, which is much more of a kind of flexible approach to how you work in the next 10 years rather than a very rigid blueprint. So you've got flexibility in how you approach meeting the vision. It's really about how the town guides change over the next 10 years. So as I mentioned earlier, the goals are intentionally high level, the themes are intentionally high level, and they reflect directly what we heard from the public input so far. And how you go about them through the specific strategies that we'll be working on over the next several months are flexible to lots of different approaches. So I'll pause here if there are any questions or comments on the themes thus far.
I don't see any hands presently. You must be dazzling everybody, Austin. Can press on.
Okay, I will. So next, I just wanted to touch on the project timeline. Jen gave a little bit more of a high-level overview of the 4 phases of the comprehensive plan, and we're just entering phase 3 of 4 right now. Overall, the project schedule, we're operating on an expedited project timeline to adhere to a contract end date of the end of October of this year, both on time and on budget. So when we first met with Tony really in the end of the summer, this past summer, to kind of nail out the project management plan, the schedule of advisory committee meetings, we scheduled all of those meetings and made the tentative agendas for the meetings up to a year in advance. So that's kind of shown on this schedule here. Each of the brown tiles is one of the advisory committee meetings that we already have an agenda in mind for. So we're just entering phase 3 right now. Phase 3 is all about the strategies, as we've said. And in phase 3, we're planning multiple stages of review and input from both town staff as well as members of boards, committees, and commissions, and the public over the next several months. So phase 3 is going to last until about midsummer or so. And there'll be kind of a volley of review stages, bouncing back from town staff to us, to the advisory committee, to us, to the public, to the advisory committee. So there's lots of layers of review in that. And through revision and revising the strategy list, we think you're going to really come up with something that is really strongly vetted by all of the key stakeholders and the community in Bedford. So the first up is kind of a preliminary staff review, and we've sent a preliminary list of strategy ideas that our team has prepared to the planning department staff, so they're able to look at it this week and get us some preliminary comments before we bring it to the advisory committee at their next meeting. The second layer of review is the public strategy working sessions. Those are scheduled for April, and I'll touch on those in just a second, our agenda and plan for those. The third is another staff, board, and committee commission review, this time with a focus on implementation needs. So once the strategy list has gone through 2 layers of review or so with the advisory committee, with the public, and then with some wordsmithing and adjustments from our team, we'll bring it to staff, boards, committees, and commissions to focus directly on implementation. So now that the strategies have been ironed out a bit more, what would you actually need? If you're responsible for implementing this, what are your staffing needs? What are your funding needs? What are the timeline considerations for this? And we can bring all of that input into the implementation matrix closer to the end of the plan. So there's advisory committee review between each stage of the engagement there. And open right now, as I mentioned earlier, is a public comment survey on the vision, themes, and goals that you received in your packet. We've tentatively planned to hold this open until this coming Wednesday, March 3rd, because that gives us enough time to summarize all the public feedback and bring it to the advisory committee for their next meeting. So for any of the members of the public watching, that is available on the project website. The link is here. It's tinyurl.com/Bedford Comprehensive Plan. That's the hub website for the project that we've set up that hosts all of the engagement activities. And next up, as I mentioned earlier, are the strategy working sessions. So the tentative dates we have held for these, and we're in the process of reserving those spaces, as I understand it, with town staff, are Sunday, April 12th at Town Hall in the Read Room, and Saturday, April 18th at Bedford High School in the cafeteria. We're planning for these to be larger scale public events, so that we wanted those kind of big spaces so that we could have a lot of kind of interactive activity. The design is some 2-hour small group discussions. There's 1 session for each theme of the plan. So 6 sessions total split over those 2 days. There'll be themes 1 through 3 on April 12th and themes 4 through 6 on April 18th. Our plan is to have these open to everyone. So whether you're a member of the public, whether you're town staff, a member of a board or committee, they're really intended to be open for everyone. The small group discussions will kind of break down into basically going through the strategy ideas one by one for each goal in that theme that's in that session. So there will be opportunities to talk with friends and neighbors about what works about a strategy, if a strategy wouldn't work too well, if what they think about it, basically. If they need any revisions to it for them to feel like it's not a deal breaker and they could support it in the plan, or if they have any new ideas that they want to bring forward. So it's a pretty open-ended, but very designed workshop activity for members of the public, boards, committees, and town staff to engage with. We'll also have a kind of presentation on the comprehensive plan process at the beginning, as well as remarks from some local resource leaders. And those are kind of folks that we're going to want to be recruiting over the next few weeks if they want to offer a few words at the beginning of that session. Because each session, being one of the themes of the plan, is going to have kind of a theme. So, for example, in theme 4, which is all about housing, if there's either a member of town staff or a member of a board or committee or just an active advocate in the community that wants to say a few words at the beginning about the existing conditions of what housing is and what Bedford's status is in regards to that theme, they can offer a few words there as well, and we'll kind of coach them through how to help set the stage for the working session. And then we'll break down into small groups, and folks will get into groups of 3 to 5 or so and work through each of the strategies, rank the ideas, propose any revisions to the strategies, or suggest new ones if they think there's a gap to help meet those goals. So we're going to need your help sharing the word to this. We're going to post it on our project website with a set of RSVP links. These will be public meetings, so an RSVP will not be required. But we do encourage it because it helps us know how much food to bring. And it also helps us know or helps us get folks' email addresses so that we can send them the meeting materials in advance. We'll send them the pre-work packet, which is basically all of the strategy ideas with some space to take notes, some space to jot down a ranking of the strategies in advance. We're not going to collect the pre-work packets. It's just for folks to start thinking about the ideas before they come to the meeting. Yeah, Jen, go ahead. I see your hand up.
I didn't want to break your flow, but you keep saying ranking and it's actually rating. I know it's very easy to confuse those two.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're not ranking them is basically putting them in order, and rating them is talking about which ones we really support, which ones we don't support at all, and which ones we're feeling a little bit in the middle about. So that's what the activity is.
That's exactly right. So there's two kind of key pieces of feedback that we'll be collecting through these working sessions. The first is each small group is going to be taking notes about each of the strategy ideas and then notes at the end about any other ideas that they want to see added. So we'll collect those group notes, which just takes, if 50 people attend, and they split into small groups, that's just much fewer packets for us to collect and easier to sort through the ideas. The second piece is that we'll do the rating system. So each individual that joins will take an exit poll and rate the strategies, either a 1 if they want to remove the strategy, they don't like it at all, a 2 if they think it needs a little bit of work, but they could see it in the plan, and a 3 if they think it's good as is and they love it. And we'll take all of those exit polls and basically average the results to come up with an understanding of which strategies are really the most supported by the public and the members that were able to come to that meeting of what should be in the plan. So that's our methodology for that. And I'll pause there again. Are there any questions or comments or ideas about this so far?
Chris,
It's just wanted to note I looked through the your working version of the themes and goals, and a lot of good stuff there. Wrote some fairly lengthy comments. I'm not sure if Tony's passed those along to you yet. But yeah, absolutely was, I think what you presented here, great segue into strategies. That was, my comments were really all oriented towards strategy, and what you have in the draft themes and goals. Really encourage that as the next step. So I feel like this is really looking good.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. And I hope to see you at some of the working sessions. So one thing,
Look forward to attending.
and I said plural
Yeah.
because I
Austin,
please.
so I have a question. You mentioned on, of the 6 vision areas, you're going to approach, or somehow you're going to approach or identify local experts, advocates, etc., in each of these areas. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, if I could
I
just
mean,
chime
there's
in.
multiple ways you can do it, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, what we like to do is get 2 or 3 we call them resource people. It's,
Yeah.
it can be town staff, it could be a board or committee member. It's somebody who has a particular perspective that would be respected in this group. And how we would do that is we would work with the committee, the advisory committee, and town staff to help us figure out who those people are, who you want to invite. And then we obviously have to talk with them soon to make sure they're even available those days.
Yeah, how much notice, your last sentence was the one. How much notice are you looking for on this to identify them?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good at your next meeting, which I think is the week after next. I don't have the date in my head, of the committee meeting, not the planning board, to really start to, I don't know if you've already talked about it at your last meeting, but to start to talk about it and finalize that list shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we haven't, but obviously there's relevant committees, on each of these areas in town. Okay.
And
I-
if committee members could start thinking about it now and bring their ideas to the meeting, that would probably be more efficient.
Sure, thank you. Look like press on, Austin.
Well, I will not press much further because that is my final slide.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for letting us go so long. I know we've spent almost an hour of your time and I appreciate that. Sometimes we get 15 minutes on these agendas, so I really do appreciate it. It's nice to have a lengthier discussion like this. And we do hope you'll participate in those working sessions. Maybe not all. We don't expect people to come to all of them, but certainly you're welcome to all of them. I know it's a long day, long 2 days. But we do encourage it, and then we'll come back and see you at the end, towards the end of the phase 3, and we should have a short list at that point that you'll get in your packet, so that you can sort of see where we landed and give us any additional comments before we start laying out the plan. All right, I think that's all
Thank
we
you.
have, unless you have
Uh,
any questions for us. Oh,
Questions, both the members of the board or other people on the call?
I
Other
see Dawn's
residents of
hand.
the town of Bedford?
Yes, Stevens.
All right,
One of
go ahead.
the things that that I was wondering as I was listening, I know we've scheduled, you know, a Saturday and a Sunday, 3 sessions each of those days to do this. So is it your vision that, you know, if we have sessions at 9, noon, and 3, then in each of those sessions, we'd go through sections 1 through 3, 1 through 3, 1 through 3 on like the first day? How are you looking at doing
Yeah,
that?
no, sorry, that wasn't clear. No, each session is just one theme. So
Okay,
session 1 is only theme 1, and
got
session
it.
2 is theme 2. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, we're trying to make these into as bite-sized chunks as we can, but still allow people to have these deep discussions.
So clearly we need to make it well known to the general public the time of each session, because obviously there's people that are focused on a subject as opposed to all subjects. So, all right, good that we got that clear. Thank you. If this is everything, then we will thank you for your time. Look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
And then I believe we just on the board, our next item on the agenda is the 229 Old Bill Ricker Road subject. And the question then being, thank you, Jen, thank you, Austin. Is there someone to speak on this
So,
subject? John?
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
uh,
Tony.
just at
important.
7, just before the meeting started, conferring with Attorney Brown, they request that 229 be postponed to the March 10 meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion to, John, you have something to say?
I was going to suggest that we let people know that the other item in the session was also delayed. So for
I think you need to vote on a
Okay.
continuation for the Davis Road.
Oh, I agreed, but we gotta,
So
there's
David,
some hands up
so
yet.
for those in the audience, the board has already continued at the request of the applicant, the subdivision affecting 145 Davis Road and Jeffrey Circle has already been continued to March 10. And the board is about to consider a request to postpone discussion of what is or was 229 Old Bill Ricker Road, which is going to be renumbered as 6 Michael Bacon Way under the approved development plan for those properties. But given the information that we just received tonight from town council, the applicant's counsel and the applicant have requested to continue.
They have seen those
Thank you,
responses.
thank you.
Sorry, just
Chris?
clarification.
Yeah, I just like to know we have penciled in for the agenda on March 10th. I'm starting to think that this is going to get pretty full if it's continued to the 10th rather than the subsequent meeting.
Yeah, so the problem for our applicants is the subsequent meeting is town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So the planning board won't meet, is not scheduled to meet until
Hmm.
let me see. I forgot the exact date,
Uh,
but the
but-
next meeting is April. The next scheduled meeting is not till April 14th.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I would guess that not everything being continued tonight will be ready for discussion on the 10th.
He would agree with Tony. Todd, you got your hand up too?
Yeah, I apologize. I was just looking for clarification that the council for 229 Old Baroque Road has received the comments from town council.
They have not yet.
Okay.
That's some, I've simply notified them that I have those comments,
Okay.
and we'll share them either at the end of this meeting or tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a motion to extend consideration of the 229 Old Bill Ricker Road request for release of covenant to the March 10, 2026 meeting of the Bedford Planning Board? Or say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Todd. Chair, second.
Second.
Thank you, John. How do you vote, Todd?
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, that is then officially extended.
I think
I
continued
think
is the
that's-
technical term, right?
Continued, yeah, I'm not recovered from snow shoveling. Thank you. I think that's all of the formal topics that were on the agenda, and now we can go to liaison reports and then staff reports. Anything that come up from liaisons? If not, we can move on to staff reports. John,
I did not go to select board meeting 2 weeks ago, but I did go last night. They still haven't closed the warrant officially, although they've closed all. The wording is still up in the air, but they aren't going to accept any more articles. There was a long discussion about the relationship between elected boards and and department heads and the relevant department heads, which honestly I don't understand where they ended up. And it's still going back and forth about the library versus the planning board versus the Board of Health. I trust it will end up in someplace useful. I don't think there was anything else.
Chris, while John's thinking.
This is a question for Mr. McLean. Two questions actually. If you want to bet on it ending up someplace useful, I'm happy to take your money. The second question, I guess somewhat more seriously, although I was serious about that. I was on the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, and we made a recommendation. So it wasn't simply an up or down vote on whether to adopt the Charter and Bylaws Committee recommendation and put that to town meeting. There was a discussion of revising what we recommended. It just would seem to me that we had this committee to recommend changes to the charter and bylaws. One might see fit to recommend simply bringing forward those recommendations for town meeting to consider.
So I think there's a couple of hangups, and part of this was from the meeting a month ago. There was some discomfort about treating the library trustees different than planning board and board of health. And then just to make things even more complicated, it seems like the interpretation of so there's an argument to be made that the interpretation of our bylaws, the town's bylaws, has changed over the past 5 or 6 years. And the board and I think the position of the library board of trustees is that they do not like the new interpretation. And if the new interpretation is what's happening, they want a bylaw change to clarify their authority vis-a-vis the library director.
Okay.
So it's I think the technical term is a mess.
Yeah. I think that's a term you can use in polite company.
Yes,
Thank you.
I could use other terms, but yes, this is a family meeting, so
Well, I'm happy we're polite company. I was
yeah.
getting worried sometimes. Other reports from liaisons? Any information from staff?
Just to add to John's comments about the select board meeting last night, the proposed bylaw changes do include the changes that I announced in the meeting preview about adding unregistered and uninspected and non-operable vehicles. So among the general bylaw changes in that is absorbed into the larger article to amend the general bylaw. It's not going to be a standalone article for the purposes of the general bylaw. It will be a standalone article for the zoning bylaw. It was announced by the town manager, and it didn't really seem to get any reaction. So so I guess it's going to be included. And and then I think also just specific to Chris's question about the recommendation of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, where there was compromise language that the planning board and board of health kind of accepted, where, policy, policy direction from the elected board still applies to my position and to the director of health. But there are concerns still among the library trustees, and the library trustees had suggested an amendment to whatever compromise language, and that seemed to go in seemed to have a lot of circles last night. So that issue, I assume, will get further discussion at their next meeting. I'm not sure if there are other elements of the bylaw recommendations that are getting anywhere near that much scrutiny. Otherwise, I think the draft warrant's now at like 32 articles. Thank you to Member Crowley for offering to step up and present the Cottage Overlay District, which will be on your next agenda as a public hearing item. We will also need somebody to speak on the addition to unregistered vehicles being modified to include uninspected or non-operable vehicles.
Is that one not being proposed by the select board?
Oh, but it is, that's true. Right. Yeah, I'll have to work, but, well, somebody's still gonna have to give whatever the planning board recommendation is, but yeah, we'll have to work out with the town manager whether the presentation is actually going to be done by the select board or by, well, I guess the only other person would be the town manager, but so we'll have to start looking at that, because it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, otherwise, we are continuing to have discussions with, Cummings Properties over the future of the two office buildings at 174 and 176 Middlesex Turnpike. We're gonna have a construction coordination meeting with Brian DeVellis in a month within a month, about the start of construction of the the mixed housing project that was the 40B on Carlisle Road. It's not your jurisdiction, but we're sticking our fingers in to make sure it gets built in accordance with the decision. And then, we're hopeful that other projects that have been sitting on the back burner may also finally get up and running this year, as interest rates have finally maybe at least leveled off and people are recalibrating the finances to get some of these other approved projects built. I think that's all I have.
Yeah. To that end, the part of the presentation we saw tonight was another downtown area over on Loomis Street, but there's the development at Railroad Avenue Junction there that is still on hold, it seems, unless you've heard that they've improved their financing and have
Yeah, so
construction
if you're,
plans.
yeah, so the mixed use project at One Railroad Avenue was actually on the select board consent agenda last night to accept the revised easements related to the parking and sidewalk, where
Right.
we're trading some on-street parking in order for the public sidewalk to be on the private property and for that project to get off the ground. And so they are anticipating breaking ground this spring. They've been working with Eversource on applying whatever protective things they're going to do on the wires, because some of you may recall that building is tight to
Right.
some locations. The second and top story are a little tight to the wires, so that requires some carefully planned construction methodology. That's been worked out. As I say, the revised easements related to the parking, yeah, so in the on-street parking, there's also been a discussion with the fire department about reducing the on-street parking just a bit so that they will have fire. We're creating basically a fire access lane, somewhere to actually park a fire engine should there be an event at that location. So the pre-construction discussions have been ongoing. The building permit applications are live and under active review by various departments. So they think they've got the funding worked out. They think they've got all the, they've been working on a variety of contracts. They brought in a housing consultant to deal with the two of the units have to be affordable units, so they've been going through the paces of getting the affordable units and the paperwork involved with that all queued up. So so it looks kind of promising that might actually get up and underway.
Thank you. That's encouraging. Other subjects from anyone on the call? Todd.
Yeah, three things now. Again, the people can put their name in the hat, but I would be willing to present the zoning change for the vehicles on a lot if needed. Number one. Number two, I made at least the first draft of the slide deck for the Cottage Overlay District. I have a few questions for the planning board in terms of and staff in terms of one how much of the initial proposal that was shown in front of us should be shown to the public at all. I don't know. I put it in there as a first draft, but I wanted to get the planning board's thoughts because I know it may not be what gets built, but that's what was shown because it kind of shows the 1,800 square feet and so forth. But I didn't know what was appropriate.
I'd recommend being cautious about showing the project to the site because that's not what's being voted on.
I know.
And it could change.
But okay. But do you think I shouldn't even show any pictures? But my words can really convey how this is a proposal, or I don't know, potential, initial proposal, not necessarily what would be built, but.
Hey, Chris?
I think the pictures are really good. They can convince me. So maybe it's not a great idea to have pictures. It's a bit of an echo. Sorry, it's distracting. There's maybe it's not appropriate. It's probably not appropriate to choose areas of town, or sketches of projects that are envisioned for town, which they may or may not proceed. But if you could find examples of 10 units per acre and 1,800-ish square foot, 15 to 1,800 square foot homes in other locations, be it Arlington or Acton, so that folks have an idea of what they would be endorsing. I think that would be a good idea.
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah, I know it's easy to say, but
Right.
where do you dig up pictures like that?
And all right, thank you.
Yeah.
I am inclined to put some in, but maybe keep some of the details not there. One thing I have to say that I'm a little frustrated with, but it seems like every time I give the slide deck to, I forget the nice gentleman, but he never puts the backup slides in, so I can't rely on having those because I don't think they get put in. Which I understand because it's a whole one slide deck for everything, but I wish that could be different. Also, just the second question, my first initial pass, I actually don't have anything about 40Y in there explicitly. Again, that's something I'd probably put in the backup slides, but it seems like wouldn't be there. But I'll have it in the back of my mind somewhere written down so that if there's questions, if somebody is aware of it, at least it can be discussed. But I wasn't going to put anything in there. And then lastly, sorry, my third thing was something I'd like the planning board to think about, not for this town meeting, but that is, I just learned recently in the past month that we're not required to keep our sidewalks clean, especially in the winter with snow. I actually thought that was a requirement. I don't believe it is unless somebody says differently, but that's what I was told by the DPW. I'd like to think about potentially, is that a good idea for us to propose to into the bylaws in the future? And or is there anything we can do as a community to help the town clear sidewalks? As I'm pretty frustrated with how things have gone the past few storms, especially near the schools. And I wasn't happy that today had to be canceled. That bums me out. I wish that we could do more to help the town. As a organization, community, something, volunteers to help out. I'm more than willing to do miles if I need to with my snowblower. So it's just something to think about in the future. I'd like to put something more official on the agenda. Thanks.
And to that end, could you make sure that it gets folded into the this long-term plan that we're supposedly working on? Because that's in that topic of getting around town. If the sidewalks aren't plowed or, then, that's a problem. So yes, we should cover it, but also there's a place that should be documented. John?
Yeah, so I actually looked into this question, I think last year. The state requires that sidewalks be cleared, but it allows it to be delegated to the residents. And and Bedford has chosen not to do that. I will not go on in this particular form of whether I think that's right or wrong, because that might, I don't know, might be a discussion. But my understanding is that the town has taken responsibility for it. Whether they need to do better, whether we need to do a better job is perhaps a different question, but.
Thank you. Other subjects from anyone? Is anyone else tired from the latest snow days and wants to adjourn early? You could just say, move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. How do you vote? Todd?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
John?
Just to go along, aye.
Yeah, and the chair votes aye also. I'm looking forward to see everybody next March, our next March meeting, which may be a long prep of town meeting, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you all for your community service. See you soon.
Thanks.
Night.
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 Thanks, Kitty.
Good night.